I ran from him in the middle of the night, barefoot, bleeding and terrified. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away before he woke up. Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. The dark streets of Savannah, Georgia were nearly empty that night, except for the distant hum of a truck passing by and the sound of Lydia Hart's heartbeat pounding in her ears. She was 26, a maid in the mansion of Ethan Cole, a millionaire who had once seemed charming and generous until his charm turned into control, his compliments into commands, and his kindness into cruelty. For months, Lydia had lived in silent fear, cleaning crystal glasses while her hands shook, smiling at guests who didn't know the bruises she hid beneath her sleeves. But tonight, something had snapped. After one final, violent outburst, she had packed what little she owned into a torn canvas bag and slipped out the servants' entrance. The rain began to fall, cold and merciless. She kept walking until her legs trembled. Her phone was dead. Her money gone, stolen from her room days ago by Ethan's assistant to keep her from running. Now she was free, but lost. By dawn, she had reached the edge of the city and collapsed outside a small diner. When the morning crowd began to arrive, an elderly waitress found her there, soaked and shaking. "Sweetheart," the woman said softly, draping a blanket over her shoulders, "who did this to you?" Lydia couldn't answer. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I just need a place to start over." The waitress, Martha Joe, didn't ask questions. She offered her coffee, a muffin, and a few hours in the diner's back room to rest. And for the first time in months, Lydia felt the faint, fragile taste of safety. But fate wasn't done with her yet. Later that day, as she tried to dry her clothes near the kitchen's old heater, a tall man in a navy suit walked into the diner. He looked completely out of place among the chipped tables and humming neon signs, polished shoes, a silver watch, and eyes that carried both power and sadness. He ordered nothing at first, just stared quietly at Lydia. Not in the way Ethan used to, not with ownership or arrogance, but as if he recognized something familiar in her pain. When she tried to hide her face, he spoke softly. "Are you okay?" His voice was low, careful, almost too kind. Lydia hesitated. "I'm fine, just bad night." The man gave a small nod. "I know what bad nights feel like." He slid a business card toward her. "If you ever need work, real work, safe work, call that number. Ask for Jonathan Hale." She blinked, unsure if she should trust him. Billionaires didn't walk into diners to hand out mercy. But when she read the name, her breath caught. Jonathan Hale, the reclusive billionaire philanthropist everyone in Savannah had heard of, but no one ever saw. As he turned to leave, Lydia whispered, "Why are you helping me?" He paused at the door, his profile outlined by the soft morning light. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it, and then he was gone." Lydia stared at the card, her heart pounding. Something about him felt real, different from Ethan, different from every man who had ever looked at her like she was replaceable. But she didn't know that meeting Jonathan would not only change her life, it would test everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and forgiveness, and the secret he carried would soon shake her world again. Lydia didn't know that meeting Jonathan would not only change her life, it would test everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and forgiveness. For 2 days, she kept the card folded in her pocket like a fragile piece of hope. She stared at it between sips of coffee while wiping down tables in the diner to earn a few extra dollars. Jonathan Hale. The name alone carried weight. The man who had rebuilt entire neighborhoods after the hurricane, the billionaire who never appeared at galas, who donated quietly and disappeared from public life. She told herself it was foolish to even think he meant what he said, but each night, As the wind howled outside the diner's thin windows, the memory of his eyes, calm, gentle, understanding, haunted her. On the third morning, with trembling hands and a heart full of doubt, Lydia found a payphone near the bus stop and dialed the number on the card. Hale Industries, this is Dana speaking. Hi, I'm supposed to ask for Mr. Hale. There was a brief pause, then a softer tone. May I ask who's calling? Lydia Hart. Seconds stretched. She almost hung up, convinced she'd made a mistake, when a familiar voice came on the line. Lydia. Her breath caught. Mr. Hale? Yes, I'm glad you called. His voice was steady, warm, as if he'd been waiting. Can you come by my office today? I don't have clothes for an interview or transportation. I'll send a car. And don't worry about clothes, just come as you are. That sentence, just come as you are, echoed inside her. No one had ever said that to her before. An hour later, a sleek black car pulled up outside the diner. Martha Jo peeked through the blinds, eyes wide. Girl, what have you gotten yourself into? I don't know, Lydia whispered, but I think it's something good. The ride through downtown Savannah felt unreal. She watched the passing streets, the same ones she had walked barefoot just nights ago, now from the safety of leather seats. When the car stopped in front of a tall glass building with Hale Industries in silver letters, Lydia's stomach tightened. Inside, she was met not with the cold luxury she expected, but with calm minimalism, soft colors, sunlight, and quiet music. Jonathan was waiting near the elevator, without a tie, his sleeves rolled up. You came, he said, with a smile that seemed to ease the weight off her shoulders. I wasn't sure I should, she admitted. I understand. He gestured for her to follow him into a private office filled with books and framed photos of community projects. I remember what it's like not to trust anyone. Lydia hesitated, standing by the door. Why are you helping me? Really? Jonathan studied her for a moment before replying, because I see someone who deserves a chance, and because people once thought I didn't. He offered her a position at one of his smaller charities, a community home for women escaping abuse. You'd be helping others rebuild. We provide housing, training, counseling. You'd be safe there, paid fairly. No one will hurt you again. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, he said quietly. You just don't believe it yet. For the first time in years, Lydia smiled, a small, fragile smile that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. She accepted the offer, but as Jonathan turned toward the window, something in his expression changed. A shadow crossed his face, as if he was hiding a pain deeper than hers. What Lydia didn't know was that Jonathan's kindness came from guilt, and the reason he recognized her pain was because it mirrored something, or someone, from his own dark past, and that secret was about to surface sooner than either of them expected. What Lydia didn't know was that Jonathan's kindness came from guilt, and the reason he recognized her pain was because it mirrored something, or someone, from his own dark past. Weeks passed, and life began to regain a fragile rhythm. Lydia worked at Haven House, a quiet, sunlit building on the outskirts of Savannah where women rebuilt their lives one breath at a time. For the first time, she woke up without fear. She laughed with other women who understood her pain. She planted flowers behind the shelter's kitchen, and sometimes she caught herself humming, something she hadn't done since she was a child. Jonathan visited the center every few days, never for long. He asked questions, brought supplies, and spoke gently to each woman as though their stories mattered. Yet every time he looked at Lydia, his composure softened in a way he couldn't explain. One afternoon, Lydia found him sitting alone in the courtyard, staring at the horizon. He looked lost, his jaw tight, his hand tracing the edge of a small, silver locket. Bad day, she asked softly. He turned, startled, then smiled faintly. Something like that. I come here when I need to remember why I started all this. What's in the locket? She asked before realizing it might be too personal. He hesitated, thumb brushing over the metal. My sister, he said at last. Her name was Claire. She died 10 years ago. Lydia's breath caught. I'm so sorry. She was like you, he continued quietly. Strong, kind, but trapped with someone who broke her spirit. I tried to help her, but I was too late. His voice cracked slightly. So when I saw you that morning in the diner, I couldn't walk away. Silence filled the space between them, heavy but tender. Lydia wanted to reach out, to say something comforting, but her throat tightened. She understood his grief too well. As the days turned into weeks, the connection between them deepened, gentle, unspoken, and almost forbidden. Lydia admired his calm strength. Jonathan found light in her quiet resilience, but both carried scars that whispered warnings. Then, one evening, everything changed. Lydia was finishing paperwork in the office when the shelter's manager, Marcy, burst in holding a folded newspaper. Lydia, you need to see this. The headline froze her blood. Local millionaire, Ethan Cole files police report, accuses former employee of theft and defamation. Underneath was her photo. The article painted her as a manipulative maid who had stolen money and valuables before fleeing his mansion. Her hands trembled. This isn't true. None of it. Jonathan entered moments later, noticing her pale face. Lydia, what happened? She handed him the paper. He's found me. Jonathan's eyes darkened. You're safe here. I won't let him touch you. But Lydia shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. He's powerful. He'll twist everything. He'll ruin me. Jonathan's expression hardened, a quiet fury burning beneath his calm. Let him try. I've dealt with men like him before. Lydia didn't realize how literal that was. That night, after everyone had gone home, Jonathan sat in his car outside the shelter, staring at Ethan's face on the newspaper. He clenched his jaw. Because years ago, Ethan Cole had been his business partner, the man whose decisions had destroyed lives, including his sister's. And now, fate had brought them face to face again, through the same woman who had unknowingly escaped both their worlds. Jonathan whispered into the dark, Not this time. He won't win this time. But the path to protecting Lydia would soon uncover truths neither of them were ready to face, and what came next would blur the line between redemption and revenge. The path to protecting Lydia would soon uncover truths neither of them were ready to face, and what came next would blur the line between redemption and revenge. The next morning, Jonathan arrived at Hale Industries before sunrise. He hadn't slept. The memory of Ethan Cole's smirk from old business meetings clawed at him. The arrogance, the greed, the way he used people like disposable tools. But this time, Ethan's cruelty had a new target, Lydia. Jonathan couldn't let history repeat itself. He called his lawyer, Marcus Reed, a sharp, cautious man who had known Jonathan long enough to recognize the danger in his silence. Ethan's targeting a woman under your foundation's care, Marcus asked. Jonathan nodded. He's filing false accusations. I want to know everything he's done in the last 2 years. Every deal, every asset, every lie, quietly. Marcus frowned. You're not planning to go after him yourself, are you? Jonathan's tone was low, controlled. I just want the truth to come out. This time, the right person deserves protection. Meanwhile, Lydia tried to hold herself together. The shelter's residents comforted her, but fear crept back into her bones. Every sound, every car that slowed near the building made her heart race. Ethan had always said, "You can run, but you'll always belong to me." Now, those words echoed like ghosts. That evening, Jonathan stopped by the shelter. He found her sitting on the back steps, knees drawn to her chest. The golden light of sunset caught her hair, but her eyes were hollow. "You read the article again, didn't you?" he asked gently. She nodded. "People online are believing him, calling me a liar, a thief." Her voice broke. "I left everything behind, my family, my pride, and he's still controlling the story." Jonathan knelt beside her. "Let him have his story. We'll show them the truth." "How?" she whispered. He hesitated, then handed her a file. Inside were photos, reports, and financial documents. "Ethan's been laundering money through fake charities. I've been investigating him quietly for months. I didn't know you worked for him, not until I saw you in the diner." Lydia's eyes widened. "You knew who he was." "I did, and I knew what he was capable of." Her shock turned to confusion. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to relive it," he said softly. "But now, if we're going to stop him, you'll need to be brave one more time." Silence lingered. Lydia's fingers tightened around the file. She saw evidence of Ethan's cruelty, the very proof she'd prayed for. But beneath the relief was something else, fear of how far Jonathan was willing to go. Later that night, as Jonathan drove home, he received a message from Marcus. "You're not going to like this. Ethan's preparing to sue you for interference, and there's more. He knows about Lydia." Jonathan's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. "He's crossing a line." At that same moment, Ethan Cole sat in his mansion, swirling whiskey in his glass, a satisfied grin curling his lips. "So, the great Jonathan Hale thinks he can steal what's mine," he muttered. "We'll see how that ends." The battle lines were drawn, one man driven by greed, another by guilt, and a woman caught between both their pasts. And as storms gathered over Savannah that night, Lydia stood by her window, watching lightning crack across the sky. She didn't know that by morning her life would change again, and the truth about Jonathan's connection to Ethan would finally come to light. Lydia didn't know that by morning her life would change again, and the truth about Jonathan's connection to Ethan would finally come to light. Rain hammered the streets of Savannah as the city woke under a grey, restless sky. Lydia hadn't slept. She kept replaying Jonathan's words, his eyes when he gave her that file. "I've been investigating him for months." But something in that confession didn't sit right. Why had Jonathan, a billionaire known for his silence and privacy, been investigating Ethan Cole long before he even met her? At sunrise, she gathered the courage to visit Hale Industries. The security guards recognized her now. They greeted her kindly as she entered the sleek, glass building. But inside Jonathan's office, she froze. On his desk, surrounded by papers and photos, was a framed picture, a younger Ethan Cole, laughing beside Jonathan. Her heart stopped. Before she could move, Jonathan walked in, his shirt damp from the rain. He saw her staring at the photo and stopped cold. "Lydia," he said quietly, "I can explain." Her voice trembled. "You and him, you were friends." "Partners," he admitted. "Years ago, before I knew who he really was." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew what it would sound like." He took a step closer. "I left the company when I found out what he was doing, the lies, the manipulation, the abuse. But by then, it was too late. My sister, Claire, she was involved with him. He broke her. Lydia, she took her own life because of him." Lydia's breath hitched. The world tilted. "Your sister, Ethan was—" "Yes." His voice cracked. "He was the man who destroyed her, and now he's trying to destroy you." Tears stung her eyes. "So this helping me, was it just revenge?" Jonathan's gaze softened. "At first, maybe, but not anymore." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. When I saw you, I saw the same fear Claire used to have, but I also saw something she never did. Strength. You made me want to be better, Lydia. You reminded me what forgiveness looks like." The words pierced her heart, but part of her still ached with doubt. "How do I know I can trust you?" He looked at her then, not as a savior, not as a billionaire, but as a man stripped bare of pretense. "Because I'd rather lose everything I own than see him hurt you again." Before Lydia could answer, Jonathan's phone buzzed sharply on the desk. He frowned, then went pale as he read the message. From Marcus Reed. "Ethan's filed a criminal complaint. He's claiming Lydia forged financial records. The police are on their way." Lydia's chest tightened. What does that mean?" Jonathan grabbed his jacket. "It means we don't have much time. You need to come with me, now." They rushed out of the building as rain poured harder. Flashing lights appeared at the intersection below. 2 police cars, moving fast. "Jonathan," Lydia gasped, "we can't run." He looked at her with fierce determination. "I'm not running. I'm protecting you." He turned the car down a narrow side road, tires splashing through puddles. Sirens echoed behind them, distant but closing in. In the passenger seat, Lydia clutched the file Jonathan had given her, the proof of Ethan's crimes. Not realizing it was the same evidence Ethan had used to frame her, Jonathan's hands tightened on the wheel. "If we can get to Marcus's office, we can turn this around. I can clear your name." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face, torn between rage and regret, but fate had other plans. A truck skidded across the intersection ahead, its headlights blinding. Jonathan swerved, the car spinning on the slick road before crashing against a guardrail. For a long moment, there was only silence. Rain hitting metal, Lydia's shallow breathing, and Jonathan's stillness beside her. She turned to him, trembling. "Jonathan, please, wake up." Outside, the sirens drew closer, and as she pressed her hand against his chest, whispering his name, she didn't yet realize. This crash would not only reveal who Jonathan truly was. It would force Lydia to face the past. She thought she had escaped. Outside, the sirens drew closer, and as Lydia pressed her hand against his chest, whispering his name, she didn't yet realize. This crash would not only reveal who Jonathan truly was, it would force her to face the past she thought she had escaped. Rain poured through the shattered windshield, mixing with the faint scent of gasoline. Lydia's trembling fingers brushed Jonathan's face, cold, motionless, a faint cut bleeding near his temple. Panic surged through her chest. "Jonathan, please," she whispered, shaking him. "Don't leave me now." He stirred weakly, a low groan escaping his lips. "Lydia, are you hurt?" Tears blurred her vision. "No, I'm fine. You're the one." "Good," he murmured, eyes fluttering open. "Then listen carefully. There's a flash drive in the glove compartment. Take it." "What?" "It's everything. Proof against Ethan. If anything happens to me, give it to Marcus. Promise me, Lydia." She hesitated, clutching his hand. "You're going to tell him yourself." But the sirens were close now, flashing red and blue lights cutting through the rain. Officers stepped out, shouting orders. Lydia raised her trembling hands as they approached, their eyes sharp, suspicious. "Miss Hart, you're under investigation for fraud and theft," one officer said. "She didn't do anything." Jonathan tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "You're making a mistake. Sir, stay still." Lydia's voice broke. "Please, he needs a doctor." Minutes later, paramedics arrived, rushing Jonathan onto a stretcher. Lydia tried to follow, but a firm hand stopped her. "You'll need to come with us, ma'am." She glanced back as the ambulance doors closed. Jonathan's pale face disappeared behind them, and for the first time since she met him, she felt completely alone again. At the station, the interrogation was merciless. They waved documents in front of her, bank transfers she had never seen. Ethan's voice echoed in her memory. "You'll never escape me." By dawn, Lydia sat in a holding cell, her fingers wrapped around the flash drive Jonathan had begged her to protect. Outside, thunder rolled like a warning from heaven. Hours later, a lawyer arrived. Marcus Reed. His expression was grim but determined. Lydia Hart. She stood weakly. "Jonathan sent you, didn't he?" "He's in surgery," Marcus said, "but before he went under, he made me promise to get you out of here." He handed over a sealed envelope. Inside were notarized documents and a short, handwritten note. "Lydia, if you're reading this, it means I failed to protect you the way I promised. But don't lose faith. The truth is, on that drive, what Ethan did to my sister, and what he's doing to you, it all connects. End it, Lydia, for both of us." "Jonathan." Her tears fell onto the page. She looked up at Marcus. "What do I do now?" "You run," he said firmly, "but not like before. This time you run toward the truth." And so she did. That night, Lydia found herself back where everything began, in the same diner where she had met Jonathan for the first time. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt heavy. As she plugged the flash drive into an old laptop behind the counter, her hands trembled. Files opened, recordings, emails, bank statements, all proving Ethan's corruption. But at the very end, there was something unexpected, a video labeled "For Lydia." Jonathan's face appeared on screen, recorded days earlier. His voice was calm, though his eyes were filled with sorrow. "If you're watching this, it means you've survived what I couldn't stop. Lydia, you once asked me why I helped you. The truth is, because you reminded me that broken doesn't mean unworthy. My sister never believed that, but you made me believe it again. So please, don't let fear decide your story. Finish this. Live." Lydia closed the laptop, her heart breaking and healing all at once. Outside, the first light of dawn painted the streets gold, and somewhere beyond the horizon, an ambulance siren faded into silence, leaving behind only hope and the echo of a man who had loved her enough to risk everything. But Lydia wasn't done yet. She wiped her tears, picked up the flash drive, and whispered, "It's time to finish this." Lydia wiped her tears, picked up the flash drive, and whispered, "It's time to finish this." The morning sun rose over Savannah, casting long shadows through the rain-soaked streets. Lydia's reflection glimmered faintly in the diner's window. Not the frightened maid who had once run barefoot through the night, but a woman standing on the edge of her own redemption. She left the diner, clutching the flash drive like it was her last breath of courage. Her destination, the courthouse downtown, where the media had already gathered for Ethan Cole's press conference. By the time she arrived, the steps were lined with cameras and microphones. Ethan stood before them, in a tailored suit, playing the victim with ease. "I opened my home to her," he told reporters, feigning grief. "And she repaid me with betrayal. But I forgive her. Some people just can't handle opportunity." Lydia felt rage rise like fire in her chest. For months she had been silent, afraid, ashamed. Not anymore. She stepped forward, pushing through the crowd. The moment cameras turned toward her, gasps rippled through the air. Ethan's smile faltered. "Lydia," he sneered, "you have the nerve to—" "Tell the truth," she interrupted, her voice trembling but clear. "Yes, I do." Reporters surged closer. Lydia held up the flash drive. "This holds every document, every transaction you forged, proof that you laundered charity funds, that you bribed officials, that you framed me to cover your crimes." Ethan's face paled. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," she said, stepping closer. "And so did Jonathan Hale, the man you destroyed once and tried to destroy again through me." The crowd erupted with questions. Ethan tried to speak, but police officers were already moving toward him, alerted by Marcus Reed, who had arrived moments earlier with court orders. As the chaos unfolded, Lydia felt her knees weaken. She had imagined this moment so many times, but standing there, free, vindicated, it felt unreal. Then, through the flashing lights and noise, a familiar figure appeared. Jonathan. He moved slowly, supported by Marcus and a nurse, pale but alive. When his eyes found hers, the world seemed to quiet. "You really did it," he murmured, his voice faint but proud. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "You told me to finish it. I just did what you taught me. I didn't let fear decide my story." He smiled weakly. "Claire would have liked you." She reached for his hand, helping him steady himself. "She'd be proud of you, too." Behind them, Ethan was being led away in handcuffs, shouting empty threats that vanished into the crowd's noise. Justice, at last, had found him. As reporters called Lydia's name, she turned toward the cameras and spoke softly. "I'm not a maid, or a victim, or a rumor. My name is Lydia Hart. And this is what survival looks like." The words echoed through the courtyard. Strong, unbroken, final. Later, when the chaos settled, Lydia sat with Jonathan beneath the magnolia trees outside the courthouse. The storm had passed, leaving the air sweet and calm. "You can finally rest," she said. He looked at her, eyes filled with quiet gratitude. "No," he whispered. "Now I can finally live." For the first time, Lydia believed she could too. The two of them sat in silence, watching sunlight filter through the leaves, two souls once scarred by cruelty, now bound by truth and grace. But as Lydia leaned back, she felt a gentle peace she hadn't known in years. Because sometimes the people who save us aren't those who fix our lives, but those who remind us we can rebuild them ourselves. And for Lydia Hart, the maid who escaped the millionaire's cruelty, only to find love and redemption in a broken billionaire's heart. The story wasn't about running anymore. It was about returning to herself. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and tell me if you liked this story.